Hey, welcome back to another episode of It's a Football Thing, It's a Chelsea Thing. I am joined by a very special guest, an awesomely talented storyteller, content producer, absolute legend in the Chelsea community, in the broader football community, I might add. Feroze Ali, how are you, my friend? How are you feeling? Enzo gets the here we go. Tell me how you're feeling. You're on mute at the moment, bro. You must be buzzing. You're like me. You're just on mute at the moment, my man.
Oh no, okay. I said I feel like 100 million pounds right now.
I love it. So good.
Yes, no, for sure. First of all, I appreciate you having me. I
My
think it couldn't
pleasure.
be a better time for us to finally get this going. Record fee for Enzo Fernandez. It's surreal. It seems surreal, but I'm just over the moon, just like you.
Yeah, now we've been following it closely, and I know a lot of fellow Chelsea fans around the world. We've been tracking this day and night across the globe, wherever you are. Got my friend here declared Enzo in the house. Absolutely, my man. Let's get one thing clear up top, though. We officially got the here we go a little while back from Fabrizio, about 10, 15 minutes ago, I'd say.
Mhm.
Now it all feels
Yeah.
like a blur, but contracts are yet to be officially signed. But I've got a pretty good feeling, my man, that
Yeah.
we're going to get this one across the line.
Mm.
Tell me, before we got that announcement, give me a percentage breakdown of what your confidence level was in us getting this deal done.
Honestly speaking, like 10 out of 10. There was never in doubt for me, just because the fact that just like previous transfer windows where we did not get our targets right till the end, this one just seemed different because the owner was there, right? Or should I say the
Yeah.
owners were there this time. As much as I love Roman, Boli works in a different way, it seems. And the fact that him and the other owner were there, right? With obviously Rui Costa, who seemed really difficult to negotiate with, but you know what? From his perspective, he wants to get the best deal as well, right? Um, so what have we spent now? Like 650 million in January itself, which is ridiculous, but good days ahead.
Good days ahead indeed. And the best part, and if you're just new to the channel and you just joined, got my guy here, and we're just really going through it in a freestyle way to celebrate the final hour of the January transfer window. Of course, the final hour in what's been a frantic window for Chelsea, high octane. Let's just take a moment to breathe and reflect about what we've achieved during this window, my man, because it's been absolutely unbelievable. I feel like as each day passes, we've either had someone coming or someone going. Let's step back and think about who we've said goodbye to, particularly over the last day.
Mhm.
Jorginho.
Oh,
He's a polarizing figure in the Chelsea community, as you know.
mhm,
But I'll give you my quick thoughts up front.
for sure.
Personally, for me, of someone that has Italian heritage, I feel like Jorginho, what I loved most about him was actually his off-field attributes. What I mean by that was the leadership he's shown,
Mhm.
the resilience he has brought to this team, the professional attitude, and his overall character, my man, because not only is he a technically astute player and knows how to read the game 2, 3 steps ahead of the opponent and effectively acts as another manager on the pitch, I felt like he was kind of a misunderstood character at times because of his inferior physical attributes relative to those around him. But look, I have mixed feelings about it. I understand the club's position because they wanted to make some money before he signs a contract or leaves on a free. But at the same time, selling to a direct rival who's very much in the title driver's seat, it's just mixed feelings. How are you feeling about it all?
I wouldn't even say it's mixed feelings for me. I am really upset at this. Really upset. The fact that we obviously got Enzo, it just made me like forget about this whole Jorginho thing. Um, I am one of the fans that actually really likes him, the way he plays, and I feel like a lot of fans and supporters have been really unfair to him. Um, and I think there's a reason why Pep Guardiola wanted him before he came to us, right? He, no matter
Good
what
point.
people say, on his day is a world class player, and the fact that I get it, he was leaving in 6 months, most likely to somewhere in Italy. And I feel like what happened with Juventus and the whole thing that's going on with their points deduction and everything they're facing, that's one reason why he's not in Italy right now. And unfortunately went to the wrong side of London. But
Mm.
at the same time, it's not surprising me just because of how like our club is really nice in terms of if a player wants to go to a certain club, they're much more open to it rather than like let's say United would never let any player come to Chelsea. It's really rare. And Arsenal, I feel like Arsenal and Chelsea have that relationship where if the player wants to go, it's fine. Same thing happened with Willian, Louise as well, of course, Peter Cech. But this time, I guess it is different because it's them who are most likely going to win a trophy, right? This season, which
Mm.
pains me to say it. And I feel like just like how Pep Guardiola wanted him, and at that time, Arteta was the assistant manager, if I'm not mistaken. Arteta has been a big fan of him, and I think he will shine at a team like Arsenal because he's like a luxury player. And
And
hopefully.
he adds depth to that squad, I would say as
Exactly,
well.
exactly. And
Mm.
and it's one of those things where we are, despite us signing arguably one of the best midfielders right now, young midfielders in the world, we're still short in that department with all the injuries and stuff. So, hopefully this transfer goes horribly wrong just for selfish reasons. I just cannot
Well,
stand.
we have a bit of a history with that, and I'll get George's comment up here talking about the rivalry and the position of the two teams. But
Mhm,
you make a good point in terms of we've had history recently with Arsenal,
mhm,
particularly over the last several years, where we've had players going both directions, and for whatever reason, it appears that Chelsea generally, touch wood, have gotten the better end of those deals. So who knows? This could potentially be another one of those instances. But just addressing George's comment here, with all due respect, at this moment in time, is selling Jorginho to a direct rival getting the latter positions. Well, it's a good point in a sense of the short term situation, but obviously it's half a season remaining. Arsenal are well ahead of Chelsea at the moment, but thinking beyond this season, they are a direct rival because you do think that Arsenal are going to maintain their strength and, if not improve themselves, we've obviously taken action to improve our squad. So I would say it is a direct rival. Might not be this season, but going
mhm,
forward, it definitely will rekindle that rivalry. I've
mhm.
just got a live tweet update from Fab as well, confirming that Enzo Fernandez is currently undergoing medical tests with Chelsea staff, while clubs and lawyers are making sure a deal is signed. Enzo will fly to England with private flight in the next hours to be unveiled as a Chelsea player. Now, there's a
Yes.
couple of dimensions to this, my man, because they were talking about, do we do a pre-agreement like
Mhm.
what we've done with Nkuku and Gusto, or can we try to bring him in January? But as it stands, we are bringing him right here, right now. To me, that's an absolutely phenomenal achievement. Did you think that was a possibility that we'd get him now rather than in the summer?
Yep. Like because the thing is, it's gonna sound embarrassing, but I've lost track of all the transfers you've done, and let's not kid ourselves because Enzo was the one of the first players we were linked with, from like the start of the month, and then it went from like Enzo to like all the other players, and then
Yep.
finally it ends with Enzo. So it's not like it just came out of the blue. The fact that we've been chasing him for a while, it makes a lot of sense as to why we would want him. And as Fabrizio Romano was saying, Chelsea getting Enzo, which is something I want to discuss later. He was saying maybe once they get Enzo, with all due respect to the team that won the Champions League, right? In
Hmm.
our Champions League squad a few years ago, is the current Chelsea team better? Despite their form, I get it. One could argue that currently we do have a better overall team, but then again, it all depends on injuries and whatnot, right? And I feel like the Jorginho departure that makes it bittersweet because just like you said, I really love the way he plays and I feel like he'll flourish under Arteta and Arsenal, and especially the fact that unfortunately they're first in the league right now.
Yeah, it's ultimately a trade-off though, because depending on what you believe, of course, we've received 10 to 12 million plus this wages that we've saved. So I suppose the question comes back to, if the money that was made from Jorginho's sale, both the money received plus the wages, if that was what tipped the scale for us getting Enzo, does ultimately that sacrifice make it worth it?
Yeah.
Personally, for me, look, in the short term, it sucks during this transition period. It would have been nice to keep him on board to try to help onboard the new players, particularly because he's good culturally as well, and he's really got that great attitude. But
Mhm.
at the same time, the club has made heavy investments in terms of forward looking. Look who we've brought in: Mudryk, Madueke, Gusto coming in, and Kuku coming in. Most of these players aren't your ready-made superstars. So I've read, based on a few tweets that have come out after the Jorginho deal was finalized, that apparently his departure was somewhat amicable in the sense that he was not happy for it, of course, but accepting and in many respects, apparently wants to keep the relationship healthy with Chelsea post his playing career. I don't know how much we buy
Mhm.
into it, but
Yeah.
that wouldn't surprise me because he's someone that strikes me as a future management material, not first team manager right away, but someone that would be involved in the tactical side of the game post his playing career. Do you buy into any of that sort of narrative at all?
No, I definitely think what he said had merit because just the way he plays. I know that sounds bizarre, but like he's such a smart player, and even they asked Cucurella, right, who's the smartest player in the squad. I don't know if you saw that video where they asked
Yeah.
Cucurella, yeah, who's the smart, and he said Jorginho, and then the people at Goal.com were like, he plays for Arsenal now. And he
Hmm.
was like, "What do you mean?" And that's when he found out about the transfer, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
I just think the way he like plays and just the conversations he has, from what I hear, he will definitely do good. And I think he will probably come back. This is one of those things where players tend to come back, or former players tend to come back at the club, even if the stint isn't too long. It happens. So
Yeah.
hopefully he feels miserably at Arsenal and he comes back.
Well,
That'll
they
be the
generally
ideal.
tend to do so, my man. They tend to rekindle the saying the grass is not always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
We got a good comment here again from George, because I must posit George is one of our regular subscribers and viewers, particularly from a Manchester United perspective. So he's bringing in from that angle. He goes, I think you should have strengthened the keeper. I can see a scenario where Everton go down and Pickford ends up at Chelsea, but Chelsea should be looking for better than Pickford. Now, we've obviously bought a lot of players from an attacking sense, midfield sense now, with Enzo hopefully getting that done ASAP. But what are your thoughts on Chelsea's goalkeeping situation with Mendy being injured in and out of form, Kepa coming back into the team? And he has shown, in my opinion, some really good displays at times, but it hasn't been perfect. Just your thoughts on Chelsea's keeping situation.
I think this season is sort of like a write off.
Mm,
So I don't mind us having like a decent informed Kepa. And for next season, I actually rate Gabriel Slonina really well, really highly. The American goalkeeper that
mm.
Chelsea have. He's a young kid, and I feel like
Yep.
given like the right time and the right like commitment, attitude, and stuff. Because patience, that's what you need with goalkeepers. Obviously, Kepa had a really rough start, and same thing with De Gea at United. I really feel like if he gets the right opportunity, because he made like a crazy save a few days ago as well. I don't know if
I
like
saw
you saw
that.
that.
Unbelievable.
Mhm.
Clawed it out of the goal.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
So why not give him a chance? Because I feel like he deserves it. And then worst case scenario, then Todd knows what to do, right? He has a checkbook ready.
Todd knows. Trust in Todd. But Liam Toomey actually made some good comments the other day. I was listening to him, and it was on Dan Child's podcast. I just had him on 90 Minutes there, and he was talking about this misconception with the Chelsea base in terms of, while Todd is the face of the operation, he's the run front and center. He's much like the president in many respects,
Yeah.
but the reality is Chelsea's ownership group as a whole has been super active, and for all of the good business we've done, they equally deserve a lot of praise, because as a unit, they've been phenomenal in terms of how quickly they've been able to go in, have a blueprint, and start to execute rather than just do lip service. So I think it's just important to say to whoever's listening and those online, thank Todd, but thank the rest of the ownership team, because they've done an absolutely brilliant job to make all of these transfers happen. Did you have any any quick thoughts you want to have on the ownership group, particularly what
No,
they've done during the January window?
I feel like you've nailed it. What they've done is phenomenal. And I think I tweeted it like yesterday, which is something that, as much as I love Roman, I appreciated what he did. I appreciate what Marina did. They were really good at their jobs and whatever they did for the club. But for a lot of transfer windows, especially the January transfer windows and deadline day, anytime we wanted a target and it went to the wire, we never got it. It just did not happen with Cavani, with Falcao back in the day. It did not happen with Modric as well, because the whole thing with how strict Levy was. The
Yeah.
list goes on with Pogba, John Stones, Icardi as well. When Conte wanted him, it just did not happen. We did not get that dream signing for the first time. Since Torres, I feel like we finally got a world class player over the line. No matter how stubborn the other owners were for, or the other president was for the other club, we got it done. This concludes the perfect window for us, and I feel like the owners and everyone involved deserve a huge credit. So
Spot on.
I'm just glad things have changed for the better. And it was about time. It was about time.
It was about time, and you kind of alluded to the answer to my question. I actually put something in the poll ahead of time, but I'm keen to hear either if you're in the live chat or you watch this post live chat, because many of you are probably hit the hay after hearing that news. But my question for yourself, and I think you gave me your answer to this already, what rating out of 10 do you give Chelsea's transfer business? I'll go on the record. I'll give it a solid 15 out of 10. They've been absolutely brilliant. Look, I suppose the downside is obviously losing quality players like Jorginho. Now we also have Ziyech, apparently. I'm not sure if that's 100% confirmed yet. Feel free in the live chat to correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that he has gotten a straight loan finalised with PSG. But look, I think the club, for me, has done a good job in not just focusing on bringing in the new age, but also made a conscious effort to try to offload players that, rightly or wrongly, they don't see sticking around for the long term. Just your quick reflections on Chelsea's transfer business.
No, I think the
Or
club
the rating itself.
Yeah, no, I would say I would probably give it a 9.5 out of 10, even though we got Enzo and I'm over the moon with all the signings. I feel like the Jorginho departure for me is just that sort of is just puts a slight dent on this perfect window. And I feel like even Gusto, I'm excited that he's coming. I just wish we wouldn't have loaned him back just in case, knock on wood, Reese doesn't stay fit, right? I just hope like we have that situation sorted, because if like he's injury free, that's fine. But that's one concern that like us fans have had over the past few months when it comes to like our fullbacks getting injured. It's just sort of like sucks, which is why the fact that Cucurella came in, Lewis Hall obviously can play left back. We needed someone on the right side, and still I don't think that's sorted. Hopefully, like everyone is fit, but otherwise, I would give it a 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I love the balance. Usually, I'm the balanced one, but I'm just so happy that for some time we've actually been able to address an area that's been neglected or unattended to for quite some time. George brings up the risk relationship here about the length of the contracts, and George, mate, you're a very sensible guy, and I totally understand your perspective. And Simon Jordan brought this up the other day, that ultimately Chelsea is front-ending their business to spread the risk out for a longer period of time. But ultimately, the same can be said in reverse. If you spend a whole lot of money now for a shorter period of time, all you're doing is concentrating that risk from a shorter standpoint. But the reality is true. We could spend this money on these players, and some don't turn out to be the bright sparks we wanted. But that's ultimately taking your due diligence and trusting in the data to be able to support your decision that hopefully these players turn out better rather than worse. And the good thing I would add to that is that given that the age of these players is, for the most part, they're quite young, they have time to not only maintain their quality and potential, but actually even outshine and outperform that potential and actually become even more valuable And you've got to consider the wages as well. So a lot of these players are on quite modest wages relative to what they might have got at other super clubs. So say for Mudryk, for example, he's on a reported just say 100K a week. It's around 90 to 100 we've been told.
Mhm.
If he starts to really be influential for us, he all of a sudden is becoming a 200, 300 grand plus player, but he's
Mhm.
locked down to 100 grand a week. So the club is saving hundreds of thousands of dollars every week that he plays. So he's ultimately about risk reward. So I think it's important to be nice and balanced on both parts.
Mhm.
But just on just looking at some other potential movements of players because we are in the final moments of the window. I'd be shocked if we see anything crazy, but
Yeah.
there was also speculation. This one to me, I was quite sensitive about, but Conor Gallagher
Yes.
had great spells at West Brom, phenomenal spell at Crystal Palace, very public about him wanting to come back to Chelsea, where it all started for him basically, and really make it. And you felt like this guy wanted to bleed blue. The talk of him potentially going to Everton for 40 million plus 5 million add-ons. How did you feel about that whole narrative that's been unfolding?
You know, I did tweet about this as well, saying it's if that gets us Enzo Fernandez, because I didn't know the club, or should I say the owners, would find another loophole and do the whole new structure and find a way to pay the full clause to Benfica. I was like I was willing to sacrifice, as weird as that sounds, Gallagher. I do love him, and I feel like homegrown players should stay at the club because it sort of like defines their identity, right? And the fact that he has impressed whenever he's gone out on loan, he's still raw, and of course, eventually in due time he will do good. But the fact that I feel like he didn't go to Everton just because they're probably or are in the relegation zone, and Newcastle were talking about him and stuff. So it's a very tricky situation, which is why when Jorginho went, it was going to be either him or Jorginho, right? And to even answer your question, I don't even know who I would have gotten rid of. I feel like common sense would probably say Jorginho just because of his 6 months left on the contract. But it's a really weird one. But if what I read was true, which is 40 million direct payment is equal to, I think, 200 million over 4 years, then I would have understood if the club would have sold him.
Yeah, and I understand. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
And just talking about the business as a whole, we've got Tom from the United podcast. How you going, Tom? You must be happy about United's swift business with Sabitzer, of course, with Ericsson's unfortunate injury. But the comment Tom makes, all the talk about business fees, contracts, etc., not enough for Potter dealing with the dressing room. This is a real football manager versus real life scenario. I don't see him as that guy. So let's unpack that a little bit. So Graham Potter, he's come into the club. He's obviously had some spells at lesser profile clubs, lesser pressure environments to deal with.
Yeah.
Started off well, had 9 matches undefeated, then ironically went downhill after suffering a pretty humiliating loss to Brighton, and we haven't really quite recovered and seen the best of Graham Potter as a Chelsea manager. But do you think now, with key players returning from injury, because let's also be fair and balanced to say that he hasn't had the most best of luck in dealing in that department, but having some key players return, having some positive energy from some of these new signings, do you think Graham Potter will we see a better version of him for the remaining part of this campaign, or is this something where you have some genuine reservations based on what you've seen so far?
No, I'm 1,000,000%. I'm too optimistic regarding Potter. I feel like
Love it.
he's been really unfortunate with all these injuries, and then of course the Felix thing, Joao Felix. That was that defined Graham Potter's like managerial career at Chelsea, right? Everything going well, and then just like that, his luck. Just like he even talked about it. Potter talked about it after the game, and obviously I don't want to go too much into it, but there's also talk of the FA looking at something. Unfortunately, what Mudryk did a few years ago. So you never know that there might be like another suspension or more just because of how the FA are. So I just feel like if luck goes his way in terms of player fitness and players being available, then I am more than confident in him like doing a really good job at Chelsea, because when players were fit, especially key players like Reece James, then he was winning games, right? It's one of those things where he came at a really bad time, and then in terms of like what he did, the first few games you were winning, everything was good, and then boom, players get injured, and then obviously we don't perform well. The fact that now players are slowly coming back and we are signing arguably world-class players or super talented youngsters, it's a recipe for success. So I'm really optimistic when it comes to Potter, and I feel like not just me but every single one should judge him once he gets to feel his full team, right? Otherwise, that's just not fair. Because look at Arteta, right? He had
Spot
so many
on.
players, and all of them were fit, and still people were giving him time. The fact that Potter is a few months in and hasn't had a full squad yet, come on, let's be real. And I really think they're going to be really good days for him in the club.
Yeah, no, well said. And I think it's not just the whole every club has injuries notion. Yes, that's true, but not every club has 10 plus key players out. So I think that context is super important. And I think what works against Graham Potter sometimes, just speculating here, and happy for you to jump in and say, nah, RJ, that's not what I think. But I think part of his quiet, normal, sensible demeanor sometimes, like he just goes with the flow and just takes it in his stride, and he doesn't really react or show any emotion. I think sometimes as a fan base, because we're so emotionally invested, when we see him or the team not play well or receive criticism, it's natural for him to say, show some reaction, show some fight. But because he's such a level-headed guy and he doesn't have that, sometimes we're irrational and we just channel our frustrations into that, and it allows external people to come in and question this guy's mental fortitude, because they're saying, oh, he doesn't look like he can handle the cutthroat environment of Chelsea. But I've got to say, when I study the things he says and the things that are written in the press articles and that, it's all very reasonable commentary. And if anything, I respect the emotional intelligence of the guy, knowing that some other people could understandably get frustrated and upset with all of these things working against them. How many times key players get injured, how many players walk out or leave you, etc., etc. But he's like, nah, it is what it is. We've got a long-term plan and we just got to stick to it. And man, I've got to say I respect that quite a lot. So time will tell ultimately just how patient the club is with Graham if we don't show improvement. But I'm with you. The tone is optimistic. Key players are returning. New players have been invested. Players that are being deemed surplus to requirements, rightly or wrongly, decisions are being made. And I see this as a clean slate.
Mhm.
This is the second half of the season. There's a fresh buzz in the air, and it's all systems go. Now, just moving ahead, my man, because I really want to get your viewpoints on. So we have obviously signed a plethora of new talents as we went through. Hopefully Enzo gets done as we speak. We had Mudryk recently, Badiashile, who I think's been impressive. David Datro Fofana, apparently Fabrizio just tweeted saying that there is no loan move at this stage. The young and exciting Andre Santos, the Brazilian shining superstar in the making. João Felix on loan. Mario Aiki, of course. João Felix on loan. Out of that cohort, now the simple answer will be Enzo, because he addresses the midfield issue. Which other player or players are you most excited about? Also, Malo Gusto, I kind of forgot as well.
I feel like as much as I wanted Enzo to be done, Mudryk for me. You know, the fact that he has this, it's gonna sound weird. He has this aura where every time he gets the ball, you just feel like things are gonna happen, similar to Reece James. And don't get me wrong, it's obviously too soon to judge, but those 25 minutes against Liverpool, it just, he could have gotten like 2 assists, right? And then a goal as well, a crazy goal. And if it was any other player, I feel like when he did get past a couple of players, he could have easily gotten a penalty if he wanted to, because there was
Mm.
contact, but he just chose to stay up and go for the shot. And I feel like we haven't had a player, I guess, since Eden Hazard to directly run at players and, where you think it's going to happen. I feel like the closest person who was like that was probably Pulisic when, the whole thing that was there with the
Post
lockdown.
lockdown.
Yep. Informed
Yeah.
Pulisic, like the 6 months, he gave us flashes of brilliance. But someone like him, where you just feel like he has the talent, he has the dedication, where he's spending hours in the gym working out and then working on his shots and all the interviews he's doing, and then going back to what he's done in the past in terms of like all these like skill challenges and all these things. They're just exciting for me, and I feel like we haven't had a player like that for a while. And I really think, as much as I love our wingers, they weren't direct enough, right? I guess Hudson Odoi was that guy before his unfortunate injury. But after that, I feel like this signing is going to be a game changer for the club.
I love that. I love that perspective, and it's hard to argue. I suppose just to be different, I suppose a player that I'm really keen on seeing come in, and I think he'll add a lot of X factor up front, and Cuckoo when he comes in. I'm really excited to see, and it's one of those players, because he's not here now. You just I forgot about him. But I suppose in the meantime, Mudryk for sure, with a fine-tooth comb, definitely going to be studying him very closely based on his brief cameo. And I love watching his little training videos and seeing him putting in the extras after the session. So that will be keen to see how he kicks on. But just looking at our current crop, my man, because obviously with new players coming in, that inadvertently or indirectly creates question marks for those that are currently in the squad. So you have a few players that are approaching the ends of their contract. Chelsea decided to act swiftly on Jorginho.
Yeah.
You've got the other midfield maestro, N'Golo Kante. He's coming up. Mason Mount, another polarizing figure in the Chelsea community. Kai Havertz, there's talk about him and Bayern Munich, etc. So when you look at these current players that are 50-50 or a little bit more vulnerable, just talk me through some of your emotions about some of these players that you think you really need to step up your game here or else.
That's a really good question, because people are really critical, unfortunately, on social media. And players have emotions. Players actually see a lot of things, despite like people tagging them and stuff. On people, there are players and former players who search themselves up on Twitter and just see the comments and stuff, and it gets to people, right? That's why they disable comments on their socials at times. I feel like for me, Mason Mount has to stay. He has to stay. I love the guy. Once again, someone from the academy, and I feel like people are really too critical on him, unfortunately, and they're forgetting how good he was a season or two ago. It's just one of those things where right now the entire team is performing really bad. If like the club was doing well and he wasn't doing well, I would understand it. But it's a lot of players. Maybe there are like 2-3 players who have done well this season. The rest have just been bang average or like just not good enough, And I feel like he has to stay. There's no chance I could ever take him going to Liverpool or any other club. So for me, he will eventually step it up, and I feel like people are just too critical on Mace. And the whole thing with Kai, I was one of the critical people regarding Kai, because I feel like it's frustrating when a player shows a lot of glimpses, right, of like brilliance. And in terms of consistency, that's what we're lacking, right? That's what we need with him. And I guess his lazy approach gets to people at times, similar to, I feel like, Berbatov and Anelka, where you just walk around sometimes, or you just don't see.
Even Ziyech as well.
Exactly. And I feel like at the same time with Kai, once he's surrounded by really, really good players, maybe that's when I can properly judge him. And I feel like now with actual creators and stuff, he will do good. But at the same time, the problem with Kai is I feel like no one knows his position, no matter what people say. When he's an attacking midfielder, people say he should be played as a false nine or as a winger. He's similar to Thomas Muller. I feel like he will benefit at a club like Bayern or a club that dominates in the league that will just, score here or there, and then in the Champions League be there for the big moments. I hope I'm wrong and he proves me wrong, and he delivers, but I just feel like we don't know his best position, and he's running out of time, and hopefully for the next 6 months he can deliver and sort of cause headaches in terms of where he's going to play once Nkunku comes in.
Yeah, no, and look, I was listening very actively, and I agree wholeheartedly with your sentiments. Firstly, about Mason Mount. So I have a bias towards Mason because I was privileged and blessed enough to meet his father, and we had a nice catch up in Sydney. And this is no flexing because I know you've had the main man John Terry, which I will definitely get your thoughts on. So make sure you remind me because we're not leaving until we hear that in great detail. But met Mason's dad Tony last year. We had a nice lunch, and I got to hear in a lot of detail just about what makes Mason tick and just about his incredible professionalism, his resilience, all of that.
Yeah.
So naturally, I'm a bit biased towards Mason, but what I would say is I think it's fair for the Chelsea fan base to have honest, objective, constructive criticism. The key word constructive, because I think there's a threshold where you cross when your feedback is just so lopsided or one-sided and it's negative, when it's okay to call out something where you're frustrated if he's done something. I'm sure he's frustrated, by the way, but also be objectively praising when he does something good. It's as if he can not do anything good, and that's not fair. And I think the same goes for all of the players that give their 100% for the club. So that's just my little rant on Mason. But Kai Havertz, I've said this a million times on this show. And by the way, if you are new to the channel, please give us a like and give us a follow. Make sure you check out my man here and his incredible video he just released shortly on Enzo. It is an absolute banger, by the way. But Kai Havertz, I keep saying it, I don't know what Kai Havertz is. He's the moment's man. He's the flashes of brilliance guy, but he's Mr. Consistent Inconsistency as it is. And I do sometimes feel like, similar to Mason, he's a little bit of a victim of versatility and has been moved around a lot. Mm-hmm. But for me, I really want him to make it. I do think that there is a genuinely superstar talented footballer there, but there is a level of tolerance that the club or any club can have to wanting to see the potential convert into actual consistent end product. So for his sake, I hope he kicks on for the remainder of the season and he really shows us why we've put a lot of trust into him. But also, I asked about Kante. For me, I've loved that guy for so long. I've got a little scarf of him in the background. I just think on his day, he's not only world class, but he's one of the very best in his position. Given his injury record, the approaching end of his contract, are you more inclined to extend it on reduced terms, or do you just say, thank you for everything. You've given us all you can. Go enjoy life somewhere else and have your legacy here is protected. Just your thoughts on Kante.
I feel like a player like Kante is super rare, right? It never happens where you get a player like him. We are really lucky to have Kante, and someone like him deserves a chance in terms of I'm not gonna say another contract. It's one of those things where I feel like we should wait it out another month or two, because if God forbid if he gets injured again, then I'm like, yeah, this is it, However, if he is somehow injury free, because now we have Enzo and hopefully more depth players play there, then it's fine, right? Because he deserves it. I feel like not just as a servant, but if he is fit, then it's a game changer, right? Any club in the world would want him. So I feel like if we have the right funds and stuff, and now the fact that like a lot of players are leaving and the wage bill is clearing out, and that suits us, then that's fine, because all these other players and all these youngsters that are coming in or have come in are at a pretty lower wage compared to how the older player were. So I feel like he deserves another chance, and hopefully, knock on wood, things work out and he comes back to full fitness and is like the old Kante, right? But one can only hope, right?
Oh, we can only hope and pray, because when he's on the pitch and when he's given 100%, he genuinely transforms and provides that balance, because he's not only someone that's great at the recovery side of things and the way he gravitates around the pitch, but he's also so instrumentally important in the way in which he uses his high octane to press from the front foot and really get us the ball back. So, yeah, it's a conundrum, the Kante conundrum. We will see, but I'd love a scenario where he comes back and we manage him in a way similar to Thiago Silva, but he's quite special because he just seems to defy logic anyway. But if there's a way in which we don't overexert him and just keep him for not just the big games, but spread his load out, because when he plays, he makes the difference. So, look, I really hope that is the case for us.
Mhm.
But then when I look through some of the other players that we got, and I'm actually thinking about the start of season signings. So Koulibaly, Raheem Sterling, for example.
Oh,
I look at these players we've brought in, and I have to say it's been a mixed bag, my experience. I was expecting, to be fair, a lot more from Kalidou, but through a combination of acclimatizing to a new environment, manager change, his adaptation to the Premier League, whatever it is, at the moment, I feel like it's been more negative than positive for him. Whereas Raheem Sterling, I feel like he's given us a lot of good signs, but in typical Sterling fashion, he's the person that could be, but the person that frustrates me a lot, particularly in that final third. Take the shot. Don't be so indecisive. But that's just me ranting. Talk to me about Koulibaly and Sterling and what you see their future at Chelsea's to look like.
Yeah, I've resonant with you because when they both signed, I was really excited, and there were a lot of good signs at the beginning, right? With him scoring, Sterling scoring a lot, and then even Koulibaly, what he did against Spurs, and just the way we were playing, it was really good. And then unfortunately, the form got like dipped for both of them, and then the managerial change as well. And then of course, I feel like Potter eventually had to play him as a fullback at times, which doesn't suit him at all. And then obviously he got injured. Even Koulibaly got injured a few times. That did not help either. So both of them have been frustrating, but I feel like it's not fair because it's like it's been a few months only, and the fact that like everyone was getting injured, it just I feel like no one besides Thiago Silva has survived this thing
He's a
that's going
freak,
on in the
isn't
club
he?
because it's a really strange situation. From the outside, all these supporters, fans, journalists, everyone who isn't too familiar with what's happening at Chelsea, it just looks bad, right? 10th place, new signings, what's going on? Todd Bowley just spending money on targets that are not his, but it's not true at all. The club have just been so unlucky with injuries, suspensions, and whatnot. And I feel like eventually they both will succeed. Especially Raheem Sterling. I'm confident he will succeed just because of how good he is. Sure, he's frustrating, but I feel like with the players we have now, there are going to be more than enough chances for the players to bury the ball in the net. I'm more than confident with him, and I feel like others will leave more like will most likely leave except for him, right? He just got here. He loves London. He's on a good contract. Long term, he's fine. Koulibaly, same thing. I feel like we should really sort of manage his minutes, and because we have good defenders at the back right now that can rotate here and there. So hopefully we give him those minutes, get his confidence back, and he can be like a leader that he was at Napoli.
Yeah, some great points, because I think if anything, the broader theme for me, and as the deadline day is looked to shut, I think it's good now we've got this cohort of young, exciting prospects as well as the experienced players. So what I'm hoping at least is that the experienced and more seasoned veterans that perhaps aren't performing to the best of their abilities will get some inspiration and that competitive spirit that's driven by these young talents that have been brought in. But equally, those young superstars will be able to benefit from the experience of those more seasoned veterans, and hopefully together they both elevate each other's games. So I like that optimistic look with both Sterling and Koulibaly. And I've also noticed Kukureya as well in
Oh yeah,
recent times overcoming his injuries I think he's done a great job to be able to really rediscover his better form. He's not at his best yet, but I think he's shown some positive signs. So that's nice, and hopefully him and Chilwell and Lewis Hall as well, who's been deputising well in that space, I might add. I think we're looking a little bit more secure on the left-hand side of the pitch, so that's nice to see. But just winding the clock back, I asked you, I want you to share with my viewers, because I've seen it online, but we all want to hear it. Just tell us in a very short way what it was like meeting captain, leader, legend John Terry, and just whether or not you guys are still in touch. Just fuel the fandom for me a little bit on this.
Before I do that, give me a second, all right? I need 10
100%.
seconds. 10 seconds.
Let's do the countdown. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, why our man is attending to his matter, let's just take a quick look at what's going on in the Fabrizio Romano space of the transfer window. And of course, if you're playing this back, make sure slap a like, check out my special guest and all of the awesome work he does, and tell us in the chat bar, who's your favorite signing so far? Who do you think in the current Chelsea community is in most danger of maybe saying goodbye in the next transfer window? And of course, give us your rating out of 10 for Chelsea's transfer business, because we want to hear all about it. And I know my fellow co-host, Scott the Gooner, will be happy with the Jorginho stuff. He's going to tell us all about it. And Robbie, the Red Devil, he's definitely going to tell us all about the Sabitzer deal. You're back, my man. Hope you took care of what you needed to.
Yeah, no, the back was covered like his name. So, I had to give him my respect and take the hats off.
Oh, love it. Love it. He's a legend.
Nah, so it's one of those things where I have been connected with a lot of players in the past. Drogba, pretty much my whole career, I feel like started because Drogba shared my video on social media, I would say a decade ago. And back then, players sharing videos of content creators was not like common at all. And I feel like that boosted me a lot. He posted on IG, Twitter, everything. I eventually met up with Drogba. That was really cool. And then Frank Lampard, I interviewed him when he did play for New York City FC, and I just had a 5-second interaction with him. Actually, no, I did not interview him. I was in the change room. Funny story. I was in the change room because that's where the interviews happen for the MLS. And I told him, "Oh, can I interview you?" And he said, "I'm so sorry. I did not play a single minute. You cannot interview me." And then I just talked to him about like me being a Chelsea fan and how John Terry signed a new deal back then. And he's like, "I promise you, next time you get to interview him." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then fast forward like 2-3 years later, I ended up making like a documentary with him for Bobby Tamling. So that was really cool. So all these interactions were really nice. But in terms of like a proper connection, it's with him right here. Because what happened was last year, I got into the whole, now people are not going to be too pleased, but I got into the whole NFT space. And, with crypto and all, I was just in it. And because I was a Chelsea supporter and JT was asking on socials, is there anyone, who knows about NFTs? A lot of people tweeted him my name, right? So then he sort of like followed me, contacted me, and then we were exchanging messages here and there, but it was really formal, right?
Yeah.
And what happened was I was talking to him, and then like just generic answers, nothing too crazy. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't even know if I was talking to him, to be honest with you. I'm like, maybe it's his, management or something. And then unfortunately, last December, last December, I broke up with my girlfriend, and I was going through a rough time. I was thinking of deactivating my social media, and what I do is I'm really vocal with whatever happens in my life on socials. That's just how I deal with things. And out of nowhere, I get like a whole paragraph from JT.
Wow.
I'm like, wait, what's going on? Because before that, we were just like, he followed me here and there, and then there were just one-word answers. And then that's when I'm like, wait, what is this about? And then he just went like, you're so brave for speaking up, like, about this. People go through stuff. You're a real hero. And I was like, no way. And then him and I just talked it out for like 20-30 minutes. And that was one of the best conversations ever, and the most important, because it's not just as a fan, right? He reached out as like a human and as a friend, and that's something I'll always appreciate. And then eventually what happened was, um I was supposed to go to Abu Dhabi, and then that was still back and forth for the Club World Cup, because I was not sure what was going to happen with COVID and whatnot, the restrictions over there. And I was born in Dubai, so I really wanted to go there. And then JT also was like, he probably is not going to go because he has to take care of the youth team. And I'm like, that's fine. And then right when I'm on the plane, I find out that he's coming. He lets me know that him and someone else, our mutual friend, is going to be there. And I was like, cool. I met up with him as a fan, I think in 2014. I met up with him as a fan, but he did not like remember that anything. And then in Abu Dhabi, he was supposed to come to the hotel where the Chelsea team were. But because what happened was Tuchel ended up getting COVID, so they had to be in a like in their own bubble, unfortunately. So then he had to switch hotels and be somewhere else. And then we were just talking back and forth. I'm like, hopefully I see you soon. He's like, yeah, it's gonna happen. Don't worry about it. And then on the last day after we became champions of the world, um, I went to the hotel. I was just there, and while I was walking by the pool with my friends, because we were looking at like another hotel to switch once we are done with this hotel, just to stay. I see JT just there, and I'm like, he's by the pool. I don't want to make it awkward and go up to him. I'm like, I'm gonna probably like talk to him in a few minutes when he comes out, comes out of the pool. And then he turns around, he's like, Feroze, and he walks to me, and I'm like, no
wow,
way.
he called you out. That's
I'm like,
so awesome.
no way is this happening. What is going on? And then two of my friends back off on the side because they don't want to make it awkward. And then he comes and he we dap it up. He hugs me. He's like, how's it going? What are you doing here? And then I was just like talking to him about like how crazy it is. This is happening, that we're like, the fact that he recognized me is surreal. And then the strangest thing to me to this day, even though he's a good friend, even though he's like, for me, arguably the best player to ever play for the club, the fact that he asked me, can I post this on Twitter? I
He asked your permission.
He asked me, can I post it on Twitter? And I actually lost it.
Surreal.
And then I told him, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we record a video together? He's like, yeah, go for it. So this is a really important thing, because when I recorded my video with JT, the first 2 seconds were like, you are real. The reason I said that was not because, he's like a superhero, but it's because a lot of people were thinking that I was talking to his management and not him. And a lot of people misunderstand that, right? Like how players only are managed by like their team and not themselves. So that's why I said that. And then obviously we talked for like 20 more minutes, and then like he said, whenever I come to England, I can he invited me over. I'm like, that's perfect. And then eventually I got in the car, and then I realized something. I took a video with him, but the photos him and I took, I didn't take them on my phone.
It was on his phone, wasn't it?
It was on his phone. So I was like, oh, no. And the thing is, Olivia was, because he was with Olivia as well, because a lot of journalists were there at the hotel. So we all were together, and like I took pictures, like we all took pictures together. And I'm like, oh no, I don't have any of that. JT has it. So then I had to ask him for the photos, and it was the most funniest. It was one of the funniest things ever.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where after that we've been in touch ever since, and every time I need a favor for like a shout out or anything, within a few minutes, if he's using his phone, he'll just reply back instantly. So it's not just a connection where it's just there as fans, but what he did for me when I was going through my lowest, that will always be special to me. And I always tell him to this day, right? And every time someone tags me and stuff, and then he sees it, he goes like, man, I saw what you said about me. It's just, at the end of the day, right? Like, he's a human, but the fact that he took time out for me, my friends, and anytime I need a favor, he always delivers. Always.
I love that story, and I couldn't stop smiling because I've heard the old saying, and I'm sure you have, they say never meet your heroes, because you get disappointed.
Uh,
But in that scenario,
yes.
JT, and I'll be watching this video back, of course, and I'll clip it because I know my friends will be loving your story. They'll be like myself. They will feel like they were you in that moment,
Mhm.
just to how surreal it was, just how amazing JT A reached out to you, B met up with you, got the photo, got the video, asked your permission to share it. All of those human qualities that you wouldn't expect of such a superstar,
Mhm.
elite athlete he was. And I suppose my sort of claim to fame was my surreal encounter that I had down here where I live. So obviously I now I run the Frank Lampard fans page, because I've been contributing to that for a few years. And like yourself, I thought, reached out to him. Am I talking to him? Am I talking to his team? Who knows? But then before he came down with his team to verse Celtic in Sydney, he said, "Oh, RJ, sorry, I'm not as active as I'd like to be, but I'd really love to meet you when I'm down there." And I said, "Oh, get out of town." My head almost exploded. But then I saw him. I saw him at the first game, but I wasn't actually able to meet him because I didn't actually able to get back in contact with him on his phone. But then for the second game, he reached down and he basically offered me his tickets and hospitality package and blah blah blah. And at the end of the game, I brought my wife and son. And when I walked into the locker room, because they ushered me in backstage and everybody had left, they were all in the dressing rooms having a drink or whatever. He was waiting outside of the dressing room. And as soon as I saw him, I kid you not, he went up to me, put his hand up, gave me a hug. He said, "RJ, I feel like I've known you for such a long time." And he gave me this big hug. And my wife saw me and she goes, "You didn't even smile that much on our wedding day, etc., blah, blah, blah." And it was like, hey, I didn't deny it or confirm, but then he
I
said to my
love that.
son,
I
and
love
it's so
that.
funny, man, because then he took my son out. He goes, "Do you want to go out on the football field?" So we went outside and it was just us. The lights were there and we got a few photos and a little chit chat for about 15, 20 minutes. And he offered me, he goes, "Look, when you're in the UK next, make sure you come in. We're going to stay in touch, blah, blah, blah." And now we message each other. And he's just a super nice guy. And I have so much respect for him, even more so than I did as during his playing and managing days. So, yeah, mate, they love those stories, but I just
Wow,
wanted to share.
that's surreal. What happened with you as well? I didn't know it was like that, but the fact that he did that for your son as well, and he gave you tickets, and you guys can
Such a
compete. That's
gentleman.
that's unreal, man. That these two define Chelsea Football Club, right? These two stories, it's just like surreal, right? Just to see players that we've looked up to like doing this, and as you said, like the saying, never meet your heroes. Well, for us, it's you should always meet your heroes, because sometimes, hey, you know what, they can exceed your expectations, right?
100%, and it just shows you that they are people behind the profile, and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover in some instances, and just really embrace it for what it is. And in our scenario,
Mhm.
I think it's fair to say that having those experiences were life changing. So for me, I'll be forever grateful. I'm sure you're the same with JT. So cheers to us to be able to get to celebrate something so special, my man. But speaking of special, having you here late at night in the UK, the start of my day before I get into the hustle and grind of my work day, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about the current transfer dealings. The window is now shut. I understand Ziyech is now with PSG, from what I understand. Enzo details are yet to be confirmed, but we have the here we go. What a phenomenal transfer window. What a phenomenal show. I just want you to give our viewers who will watch this back, no doubt, and continue to chat, just let them know where they can find you and, of course, what's coming up in your world, because I want to hear it.
No, 100%. First of all, I'm so glad to do this with you finally, and I feel like that couldn't have been a better time. The perfect window, as a lot of Chelsea fans would
The
say.
perfect
But
window.
100%, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe to this channel. You guys have to. RJ is doing amazing things. But yeah, you can definitely find my socials everywhere. Feroze17. That's FEROZ17. I create content for a lot of companies, so you're going to see a lot of sports animations and whatnot, and other video montages. So yeah, make sure you check out, especially on Twitter. That's where I post a lot of my stuff. But please, please, please follow RJ. He's doing phenomenal things, and I really appreciate you inviting me. And I feel like you and I will definitely do a lot more segments or collaborations, because it's been an honor, just to be here for sure.
Well, the honor and privilege is all mine, my man. And the information for the legend himself is in the description. So make sure you check out, click on the link and give him a follow because, like myself, you'll be hugely impressed. Just like Chelsea's transfer business. Stay optimistic, fellow Blues. It's been an absolute blast. But until then, take care.